Welcome to America Lost and Found. I'm Janelle Rapp. We're so glad you're here for part 2 of our special episode with the ever-fascinating Neale Donald Walsch. He's the best-selling author of the Conversations with God series and so many other inspiring works. If you're enjoying the conversation, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. It helps us to keep bringing you more heartfelt conversations, real solutions, and the kind of inspiration that turns life's challenges into wins. That's actually how I got in touch with you. I was watching Next Level Soul. You were on there. And you offered that book, and I had, really been into conversations with God prior to that, and I thought, well, I'm going to try this. So as I was emailing you about the potential of getting the God solution, something said, well, ask him if he'll be on your podcast. I thought, he'll never be on my podcast. He'll say no. He'll just ignore that I asked. And something said, just ask him anyway. Ask him anyway. So I did. And when you said yes, I was kind of like, oh my goodness, he said yes. What can I do about? No, Your Highness. But anyway, so I am so privileged and honored that you are here and that we get to talk about these very important things, especially right now in this time frame when there's division and war. There's so much division in this country that for me and in the world that it's the first time in my life that I've been so depressed by the outside circumstances of the world that I actually had to come home and just sit there and do nothing. I couldn't get my head up even to work on music, which is what I love to do. And I knew I had to do something to turn that around. So I stopped paying attention to as much as I was. And I got to tell you, because I was born purpose-driven, that when everything really started getting chaotic, I felt like I need to look at every side, everybody's side and listen, because I had to be the one to help fix it. And so my ego was getting in the way, I think, thinking I was big enough to fix anything, right? And so I was watching everything and listening to everything. And then the more I did, the more depressed I got, and because I couldn't figure out anything that I could personally do. And finally, I had to let go of it because I wasn't even functioning at night. And then I went, all right, it's just an individual thing. I need to be good to my neighbor. I need to love my students. I need to love those around me. And that's kind of where we're at here with this conversation, that it's here. Love who is in front of me, whether I agree with them or not, whether, we find a commonality or not. And, I think it's no coincidence that we're having this conversation right now. I feel like there's somebody out there that needs to hear what you've been talking about. And I think everything that has come up today has been ringing so true for me in my life, and just for my own personal healing and awakening. I don't want to go too far without talking about how you were homeless at one point. You were actually homeless. And how did you get out of being homeless? Because this show is about people finding themselves in loss of any kind. There are many kinds of loss in life, as we know. If we live long enough, we face it. And how you were able to get out of that, and what tools arrived to help you. I think you might have the answer for some people out there that are suffering and that feel like their loss is so big that there's no answer.
Well, I did have that same feeling in my life at one point. If I could it'd take maybe a minute and a half or 2 minutes to explain how it came to pass that I was homeless, because that's a big statement. I did live on the street for a year.
Wow.
Not for a couple of bad months, but for a solid year of my life. 2 weeks shy of 1 year, I was out there living on the sidewalk, sleeping on the ground, trying to find some place under some trees, sleeping in the rain, in the cold, in the snow, and in the heat of the summer outside, and going from person to person, Janelle, with my hand out, asking if you have anything, even a few coins. I remember one man said to me, all I can give you is a couple of coins right now. I don't have any cash on me, any folding money. And I said, you know what, my friend? If everybody that I asked today gave me 2 quarters, by 4:30 I could actually have a meal. Please, whatever you could spare. And by the way, while I'm talking about that, never walk down the street. Don't even go to your car in the parking lot without some folding money in your handbag or in your pocket. And if you meet somebody who really needs it, just offer it. Don't question. What are you going to do with it? Why do you want it? Why did you go? Go and get a job. Get a job. I can't tell you how many times I heard that one. Just get a job. I said, oh, you think it's that easy, do you? When you haven't had a shower in 6 weeks? When your hair is down to the middle of your back because you couldn't afford a haircut if you tried. And you know the worst part about living on the sidewalk, living outside for a year? I don't want to be indelicate, but where do you go to the bathroom? I mean, it becomes a matter of sneaking into restaurants. Maybe you can slip into the men's room. But the manager of the restaurant would catch you more often than not and even tell you, no, don't let me call the police. Just get out of here. I don't want you panhandling the customers. And I'd have to say to the restaurant manager, oh, please, I promise I won't ask anybody for a nickel. I won't panhandle anybody, please. I just need to use the toilet, please. You have to beg to use the bathroom. So I did that for a year of my life. Now, how I got there was I had the worst 10 days that I could imagine in my life. I lost my relationship. It wasn't acrimonious. My wife and I at the time, she's still a friend, thank goodness. We were very friendly. And we managed to end our relationship on a friendly basis. So we just agreed that it really wasn't working the way we had hoped. So that was the relationship ending. And so I said, okay, look, I'll get a little apartment someplace and we'll just separate. Even though we had 2 children together, but we agreed on a visitation whole schedule. So I thought, well, okay, I can do this. But Janelle, 5 days after my relationship ended, I was fired from my job. They called it downsizing. I wasn't let go because of bad performance, and quite to the contrary. In fact, my boss said, of all the people I hate to lose, you're one of the people. But I was the most recently hired, so I had no seniority. Last in, first out.
Right.
And the corporation said that they had to downsize. So now I lost my relationship and I lost my job within the same 5-day period. But wait, the universe wasn't done with me yet. I'm driving to another appointment, one of several that I had that week, to get a job interview. And I know I'm going to get the job because my last boss gave me a glowing letter of recommendation saying that I only had to be let go because of downsizing, but that I was one of his best employees. I know I'm going to get this job. I never made it to the job interview. An elderly gentleman turned his car, made a left turn in front of me. He misjudged the distance between our 2 cars, and he made a left turn right into the driver's side of my car.
Wow.
I mean, it was we're talking about a major accident. This wasn't a fender bender. This was an accident that destroys a person's car. My car was totaled, and my body was nearly totaled. They dragged me out of the car with a broken neck. And it wasn't a hairline fracture. I recall the wording on the medical report to this day. It said I had suffered a 3/4 inch avulsion fracture of the 7 cervical vertebrae posteriorly. In other words, a break in your neck big enough to put a pencil through.
That is something. Wow.
When I came to in the hospital, the doctor said to me, "You understand, you shouldn't even be here, Mr. Walsh. 9 out of 10 people who suffer a break in their neck that severe die on the spot because of spinal cord complications." And he said, "You survived. Not only did you survive, but the few who do survive such an incredible break in their neck wind up being paralyzed from the neck down. You, Mr. Walsh, have suffered neither consequence. As a doctor, I'm telling you, I'm looking at a miracle right in front of my face." So, he said to me, "What do you intend to do with the rest of your life?
Well,
Because you've been given an incredible gift." Now, he put me in a Philadelphia, what's known as a Philadelphia collar. It's a plastic collar that you wear that holds your head up. It's a collar that, that holds your head up. And he said, "You're not to take this collar off for any reason for at least 16 months. He said, I want your neck to fuse back to where it was. And so I don't care what you're doing, taking a shower, sleeping, making mad passionate love. I don't care what you're doing. You do not take this collar off for any reason until I tell you to." I said, "Okay, I got it." But guess what? Janelle, no one would hire me. I was going to job interviews with a glowing letter of recommendation, but no one would give me a job anywhere, and I couldn't understand. Finally, the 7th person who interviewed me said to me, "Mr. Walsh, has no one told you? No one's going to hire you while you're wearing a therapeutic device around your neck. We're very clear. One wrong move on the job, and we're paying your medical bills for the next 12 years. We can't do that. Come to us when you're all in one piece again. We'd hire you in 30 seconds. Janelle, I couldn't find work anywhere. Finally, the landlord, he carried me for as many months as he could. I ran out of my savings. He said, "Mr. Walsh, I got to evict you. I can't carry you for the rest of my life, hoping that you find work somewhere. I got to ask you to leave by the end of the month." I said to the guy, "Fair enough. Fair enough. You gave me a break for 3 months. Fair enough." But I had nowhere to go. That's how I wound up living on the sidewalk. But honestly, I thought, okay, I can do this for a couple of weeks. It's not a big deal. I can do this for a couple of weeks for a bad month. But it went on, as I said earlier, for 2 weeks shy of 1 year. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
that is some story.
I finally got a job, a part-time job. But, almost a year later, I got a weekend fill-in. He was willing to hire me to just do weekend work as a fill-in employee so he could give his regular employee weekends off. So I got a job making just enough money to afford a little one-room flat above somebody's garage. But, Janelle, I was out of the weather. And believe it or not, it had a bathroom with a shower and everything. It was a palace after being on the street for a year.
I imagine gratitude became very real at that point.
And I woke up one morning at 4:23 in the morning after I was in that little flat for a couple of months. But I was still angry with God. I thought, what have I done to deserve a life of such endless struggle? When does the struggle end? What do you want from me? And I was screaming in my head, of course. And I had a table in front of me with a yellow legal pad on it. I was making lists of things I wanted to do and where I was going to apply for a full-time job somewhere and all that. But I picked up that yellow legal pad and I started writing an angry letter to God. Dear God, what does it take to make life work? And what have I done to deserve a life of such endless struggle? And I remember writing the following words. Tell me the rules. I'll play this game. Just tell me the rules. What do you want from me? And that's when I heard a voice in my mind. Neale, do you really want answers to all of these questions? Or are you just venting? And I'm thinking, you think? Yeah, I'm venting. But if you've got answers, I'd sure as hell like to know what they are. And the voice replied, you are sure as hell, Neale, about a lot of things. But wouldn't you rather be sure as heaven? To which I wrote, what's that supposed to mean? And I was instructed, write down everything I'm telling you. And so I got answers to all the questions that I was asking. And I got answers to questions I never even thought of asking until I found myself involved in an on-paper dialogue. You know, I wasn't trying to write a book. I never dreamt that anyone would ever see this handwritten conglomeration of notes, questions back and forth, answers. I never thought anyone would ever see it, but I was actually told in the dialogue, you will make of this one day a book, and it will be accessed by many people. And I thought to myself, that's crazy. No one's going to publish a book by a guy who claims to be talking to God. It's not going to happen. So you know what? I sent a Xerox copy of my handwritten notes to a couple of publishers just to see what would, I was daring God, just to see what would happen. I thought to myself, well, God, you said it would be a book. No one's going to publish a book by a guy who claims to be talking to God. So I sent it to 2 or 3 publishers. And by golly, if a relatively small publishing house on the East Coast of the United States didn't call me back, I had my phone number on the pages, and I got a call. And they said, you know, we find this to be interesting material. We're going to publish it. I said, you're kidding me. He said, no, it's a great piece of fiction about a guy who has an argument with God. I said, no, wait a minute. You're not publishing it as a work of fiction. And the guy on the phone says, Mr. Walsch, you try to tell me you think this actually happened to you? I said, I'm not trying to tell you that. That's what actually happened. He said, well, okay, we like the material enough. I mean, it's interesting enough, but we can publish it as a nonfiction book, but you're not going to find 500 readers. I mean, people aren't going to buy a book because a guy in Oregon claims that God's talking to him. I mean, but we'll put it out just to see what happens. And that publisher was right. It was a small publishing house on the East Coast of the U.S., and he was right. It didn't find 500 readers. It found 5 million. Not bragging, just saying. That's just what happened. And the book wound up being translated into 37 languages. It was being sold in Russia, in Moscow, in Red China. It found an audience all over the world, which caused me to realize that God never intended it to be a conversation with only one person. God intended those messages to be shared by millions of people across the globe, and even more to this very day on a podcast by a lady named Janelle. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That is, wow, divine intervention, and your purpose was all wrapped up in all that loss. That's so interesting. Sometimes because I've been around people with great loss in their lives, I feel like when we have great loss, that we also have evidence of great love. Because if we didn't feel great loss, then we wouldn't have had the opportunity to encounter great love. And in your loss, you had loss after loss over different areas of your life to the point where, you ended up homeless. And I have questions. Did you have to wear that neck brace thing when you were homeless and lay out on the streets with that neck brace on?
Oh, yeah. Yes, of
How
course.
in
That
the
was the whole
world
point.
did you sleep?
You just did the best you could. Just lying yourself down.
Whoa.
People with the Philadelphia collar, they find a way to sleep. You can't do a lot of restless moving around, and but you can find a way. You learn how to just support your head with a proper pillow or whatever you can find. In my case, I didn't have a pillow on the street, but I could take. That was the challenge for me, of course. The only way I could cushion my head enough to raise it enough to not strain that neck brace was to have a pillow. And since I couldn't find a pillow outside, I had to take off the only coat I had that I was wearing and use it as a pillow under my head, which made it interesting on the 13th of February when it was pretty cold outside in Oregon. So it was a tough way to move through life.
Sounds like it. So, this all happened, this series of losses, and then this opportunity came out of all the questions that the losses brought. I think that loss can actually bring us opportunity. I say I think. I'm not positive, but I feel that if we're open, that every loss that we have can bring us an opportunity for more in our life. And that's kind of what we explore on this show, that not only does the loss, we learn a lot from the loss, and we can gain skills and tools, and we can create more of a purpose, or we can allow maybe more of a purpose. But is this how God works in our lives? Does he use everything, the losses, the wins, the everything, to bring us higher or deeper, or however we want to look at it? Is that how it works?
I like to call it life's lost and found. I think it's the lost and found. We're lost, or we suffer a loss, and then we are found, or we find something that wasn't there before we suffered the loss. Because the loss, for many people, when we suffer a severe loss, makes us stop and think, wait a minute. What's going on here? Come on. I mean, what is it? What's this all about? Come on, like I did in my life. Come on, God. What's this all about? And great loss causes people to realize, there's more going on here than meets the eye. Or as Bill said, Bill wrote in one of his plays, there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. And he also asked the biggest question of all time, to be or not to be? That is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to rise up against a sea of troubles and by opposing to end them, to die, to sleep perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil. So, loss, in my experience, caused me to stop and look at my whole life, not just at what I lost, but to see what's going on here. What's this all about, this process we call life? And it's in that searching for the answers to that question that I created my life's purpose. I don't want to say that I found my life's purpose, because I don't want people to think that God gives everybody on the planet, all 8.5 billion of us, to say nothing of the gazillions of intelligent entities on other planets. God's not a career counselor. He doesn't say, Jim, you're going to play first base for the New York Yankees. Mary, you're going to be the chief executive of a large corporation. God doesn't give us a life purpose, but God gives us in my understanding at least, God gives us the freedom to create a purpose that makes sense to our soul. And it makes sense only when we realize, as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, that what I am is a soul. I'm not just simply this body with this mind. I am, in fact, a spiritual entity, having come here to the realm of the physical for a particular purpose, to declare, to express, to fulfill, to demonstrate who I really am, an individuation of divinity. Or, if I could put it in a simple word, to evolve. Oh, I've come here to evolve, to become the next grandest version of the greatest vision ever I held about who I am. Janelle, I don't want to get into preaching here, but when that information was given to me, it changed my whole life. And I've seen it change the lives of other people. Not bragging, but I can't tell you how many letters and emails I've gotten from people saying, since reading these messages from God, my whole life has changed. So that's my message, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, it's a beautiful message, and I am drawn to it. And I was drawn to your first book. And I was also with fear and trepidation listening to it, because I was raised fundamental Christian. And so that was like, oh, I better not let anyone know I'm listening to this.
Yeah, because you realize, of course, that all non-Christians are going to hell. Every Buddhist,
exactly,
every Hindu, every Muslim, every Jew, every person of any other religion or of no religion at all, you're all going to hell.
Exactly.
Because that's what God says that God wants. And that's why when I asked God, what's your most important message to the world? She said, Neale, my biggest message to the world, to repeat, you've got me all wrong. My relationship with humanity is not transactional. Stop it. Stop it. And begin by learning how to love the person on the pillow next to you, also not as a transaction. Not, I give you this if you give me that. And so that's what I've learned, what I've come to understand, and what I've chosen to share. You're very kind to hear me out on all of this. I know I'm doing a lot of yakking up here. Sorry.
I love it. I have loved every moment of this. I'm inspired, and it's lifted my spirit. I've had a lot of challenges in the last 18 months, and I have to say that this is a wonderful, wonderful time for me, a wonderful moment to be able to speak with you and to hear these things. It's really resonating with me, and it gives me hope. Not that I didn't have hope before, but it's a different level of hope, where it's more, what can I say? You know how you talk about that everyone can hear from God, and that the way that you hear is a voiceless voice. And it's hope that I can speak with God personally, and that others that are listening to us right now can start to imagine that they could listen to God.
Not only can they, what's interesting, Janelle, if we could just take a few more minutes, most of the world's people understand and believe that God has talked to human beings. Moses claimed that God talked to him, and most people believed him. Jesus said that God talked to him and through him, and most people, or many billions, believed him. Muhammad, bless his holy name, said that God, Allah reveals himself through humanity and through me, and people believed him. Guess what? So male and female through the years, Mother Teresa, Teresa of Avila, Julian of Norwich, many people, male and female, have said that God spoke to them and through them. So the only question is whether God would speak to us, not just to the Pope or the Archbishop of Canterbury or the head ulama or the chief rabbi or somebody who has sacred credentials, but that God speaks to ordinary, everyday people. The answer is, of course, she does. That was the most powerful message I got in conversations with God. Neale, I talk to everybody all the time. The question is not to whom am I talking? The question is, who's listening?
Mm. The question is, who's listening? I think that's a good way to end today. Who's listening? But I want one more thing. Since you were a comedian and still are, does God have anything funny to share with us? Can you think of something God has told you in the past, or even maybe right now, that might be a funny, joyful way to end? Take your time. We like pauses. We need pauses in music. We need pauses in comedy. So
I think it's funny in a sardonic way, in an ironic way, not funny, ha-ha, funny, ironic. God said, Neale, you think you're somehow more special than other people. That's pretty funny, because you're not. But when you see every person you lay eyes on as being just as special as you feel that you are, it's on that day that your life will have achieved its purpose.
Wow.
So that's not funny, haha, but the irony of it is, I spent my 20s, 30s, and 40s thinking that in some ways I was more special than a lot of other people. Only when I turned 50 and got to my 52nd birthday did I understand the truth of life. So now, by gosh and by golly, I can say thank you for the opportunity to spend this time with you. My dog is barking in the next room, and as usual, he's barking up the wrong tree. So I'll go pay attention to him.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for that last bit. It was ironic, and it brought tears to my eyes, but good tears. Thank you so much, Neale Donald Walsch, and Conversations with God.
It's been wonderful to be here with you. Thank you, Janelle.
Thank you. All right, you take care of yourself. Goodbye from America Lost and Found.
Bye for now.
It's hard to say